everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Mindful Investor Podcast Show. I'm your host, Steve Rosenberg with Mynd Property Management. Today, we are going to talk about something that not many investors or business people, for that matter, really think about when it comes to why they're doing something and what their end result is they want to have because of it. And what I mean by that is we get a lot of investors that want to own real estate. They want to have the cash flow. They want all of these things, and they know inherently they must do a certain recipe in order to ensure their success. What they don't really think about is why they are doing this and what they want as an end result. And I remember I've been told many, many times by people, Steve, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep when the game is over. And sometimes the game is over when you're a certain age. Maybe it's when you hit a certain threshold in your bank account. Maybe it's just a lifestyle that you want to have. And so the guest I have today, his name is Mark Willis, and he helps people get their why, I'm going to say. He helps them get to that point of when they cross that threshold. Do they actually have something on the other side, or are they saying, wow, I just worked for 20 years, I've been busy, but I didn't really accomplish anything? And so I'd like to talk to Mark today to really get an idea of what are the challenges that investors have, why don't people succeed, and what causes them not to get to what they want. So Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Steve. I'm so glad to be with you. Great show you've got going here, so honored to be on it.
Thank you very much. So Mark, first, tell everybody who you are, what you do, what your claim to fame and superpower is, and then we can kind of dig in a little bit deeper and we can kind of ask some burning questions.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Mark Willis. I'm a certified financial planner, a 3-time #1 best-selling author, and the owner of Lake Growth Financial Services, which is a firm here in Chicago. We work with about 650 families around the United States. And we work with clients that want to build wealth, real wealth, outside of Wall Street and help them become their own source of financing for all of the things they need to buy in life, whether it's real estate or your next car.
Okay. How long have you been doing this for?
Really since the last recession. Trying to think, I guess about 8-9 years or so. So after the original crisis, which is now the used to be crisis of 2008, 9, and 10, we kind of saw the traditional retirement strategy as sort of a house of cards. And I was working for a CPA at the time. She seemed to, be one of the best out there. She was nationally recognized, Steve. She seemed to have all her ducks in a row. I mainly worked on helping prepare tax returns for her clients, but she did investments as well. And it was in the midst of the Great Recession of 2008-9 that she brought me on, and I watched her calling those clients, many of whom were in their early 60s, and giving her clients the bad news. Hey, Mr. Client, you're 63 years old, but your 401k just became a 201k, and you can't retire like we thought you could. To me, that was sort of like, well, why did we put this whole plan together for this guy? Why did he have the hopes of retiring for the last 20 years, only to see it vaporize in 20 days or 20 months. So for me, it was sort of like watching the traditional mindset of retirement planning crumble right as I'm getting into the business.
Now, let me ask you this. Well, I was making some notes as you were talking because my impression, and I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but my impression of the last, we'll call it I don't know if we can say the Great Recession because they keep becoming unprecedented every time. When you get the quotation marks of the next one, that would maybe be number A and then letter B and then letter C as we progress down the unprecedented world of events.
Now we're in the more Great Recession, I guess.
Yeah, the greater recession.
Let
me ask you this. Now, I feel that the recession that happened in 2008 was very much systemic, meaning, we caused that to happen. Based in a nutshell, that was by greed and a lot of people that were doing getting loans that they shouldn't have, and maybe we'll say laziness and greed caused a lot of that, in my opinion. this was not systemic in my belief. I'm curious, do you equate what happened in 2008? Do you think it was systemic, meaning we caused it? And do you think we caused this? And are there derivatives of what we did back then, some common traits that we are going down the path? And the reason I'm asking you that is I've had other people that I've interviewed, and some people say that we were already showing traits very similar to what we were doing in 2008. It wasn't like we were doing everything perfect, which I thought we were. I thought we would learn our lesson and we weren't making these mistakes. And they said, oh no, that is not the truth. So I'm curious your opinion on that.
Well, it's true. I think even before January 2020, Steve, we were already financially very sick. We had the financial virus way before we had the coronavirus. And, we couldn't have handled a financial drizzle, and we got a torrential downpour, unfortunately. And my prayers and concern goes out to people who've been financially impacted and impacted on a health basis because of this tremendous tragedy we're facing. One person said it's like having a 9/11 in New York, New Jersey, Chicago, LA, Louisiana, Dallas, in every city all at the same time. On an economic basis, it's an unparalleled disaster. And not to mention the health issues, okay? Right. So, but we were deeper into debt January 2020 than we were even in the midst of the Great Depression. And in fact, go back and look, the Federal Reserve was already cutting rates before this crisis hit. So they already anticipated, before we even had news reports of coronavirus, whatever that was, back in Valentine's Day, we already had major easing of the Federal Reserve. And it kind of goes to show, we were deeper into student loan debt than ever before. We had higher credit card balances than ever before, defaulting on car loans higher than any other point in human history. So those are signs of a troubled, sick economy. And we can get into some of the details of why that was if you want, Steve. But the point is, we couldn't have handled that, a slight cough, and we got a major financial virus.
Yeah. So let's kind of dig in a little bit more there. I'm just curious, from your perspective of somebody doing retirement and that kind of thing, and wanting to have that Disneyland experience when they retire to do whatever they want. And were people heading down that same path, in your opinion, on the retirement side? And were they not making it as much of a priority? Were they getting lazy? Like what was your perception of that?
Well, I honestly, I think it's a modern phenomenon. We actually used to be pretty great at saving. And this is even back when even our grandparents or even our parents were still around and doing things. Back in 1940, the U.S. Commerce Bureau says we saved on average 30% of our income, 27, I think, to be precise. As of the most recent year, we only save about 4% of our income. Now, what's interesting, Steve, is we look also at the same statistic for debt. How much of our income do we service our debt? So if you made $1,000 this week, how many dollars do you have to spend giving to the bank just to service the debt, not to pay it down? Well, the most recent statistic, and it's been fairly steady over the last 20, 30 years, is about 37% of our income goes to just service the debt, wow, not to pay it down. So that's out of $1,000 a week or whatever, you're paying $370 a week just to service the debt. And if that's the average, that means some people are going to be better and some people are going to be a whole heck of a lot worse. So we do have this financial headwind coming right at us. And again, it's hard to save when a third of your day you're a slave to the bank, and then right, throw taxes on top of that, Steve, and half your day is gone before you're working for yourself at that point.
So now that we painted this nice rosy picture for everybody watching, and everybody feels really good about themselves, let's talk about, we're in 2020, we're just coming out of the backside of this COVID-19 and everything going on. What do people do? Like if I was a client and I came to you and said, man, I don't know what to do, what advice would you, I'm curious, I'd like to know, like, you may not even be at zero. You may be below zero at this point, only because you don't know, right? And like you said, it wasn't just 9/11 happening in New York, it was happening in multiple target areas.
All over the country. Yeah.
All over the world.
Yeah,
I mean,
world.
Everything locked up. And in my, understanding, again, I'm not a financial planner, but, this is a world economy, right? If something shuts down in another country, that chain reaction reverberates to all of us across the globe. So everybody is affected by this. I don't think anyone is immune to it. So what advice do you give to someone that says, hey, I just got wiped on this thing?
Yeah.
What do I do?
Well, one, feel the feels is what I would say. Don't worry if it takes you a week or two to just get oriented to life again, or a month or two. Realize that you just got sucker punched, and it's okay to just hunker down and feel that for a minute. It's not going to be to your benefit to beat up on yourself and say, well, I shoulda. You don't should all over yourself is
right.
My first bit of advice. Now, the next bit of advice, if anything, is do you want to have happen to you next time what's happening to you right now?
Okay.
Because think about this, guys. We've had 3 major market meltdowns just since the year 2000. The tech bubble, the real estate crisis of 08-09, and now today. So, how many more of these do you expect will experience during your lifetime? And do you want to have happen to you next time what's happening to you right now? So that's my first question. Because if you don't care, then nothing else we say on this podcast is going to matter.
Right.
So that's the question you have to answer. Do you want to have happen to you next time what happened to you this time? Next point is, imagine with me for a minute that we have an airplane. And let's say that airplane, the engines allow it to fly 100 miles an hour. Let's say that you're in New York City, you wake up and you desperately need some of our absolutely delicious deep dish Chicago style pizza for lunch. All right, because everybody knows, no, I'm not going to pick a fight between New York pizza and Chicago deep dish. I won't do that, I promise, Steve. But anyway, you want to get on that plane and fly towards Chicago. And let's say the plane can fly exactly at 100 miles an hour. That's how well the engine is designed, okay? So, you hope to be in Chicago by lunch and you're going to be able to enjoy that. However, for many people, there's a headwind coming at your airplane at 370 miles an hour, right? That interest that we talked about. So no matter how hard you try, you're going to get blown out into the Atlantic Ocean if you try to lift off from New York City. So what do? Well, you can keep the airplane on the ground and wait till that wind dies down. And most people think, and I'll get to your question about advice here in a minute, Steve, but most people think that if they wait till there's nil wind, 0 miles an hour, that's as good as it's ever going to get. To fly at 100 miles an hour is as good as it's going to get. And most financial planners will tell you, hey, you know what? If you come over here and work on my airplane and fly my airplane, I'll give you 105 miles an hour. I'll give you 107 miles an hour. I'll give you a better rate of return on your savings, is what they're saying. Look at my mutual fund, look at my hedge fund, look at my index funds, look at our past performance of airplanes, and they'll say similar strategies like that. Well, unfortunately, we get to this place where we feel like we've arrived and we're all just trying to rev our engines on our airplane as best as we can. If all we can do is go from 100 miles an hour to 107, that's not going to really make a big dent in the kind of saving and goal setting that we all need to be setting aside, and many of us want to be setting aside for our financial future and for our children. So what's better than no wind? What's better than getting a little bit better rate of return on our mutual funds or our real estate? Well, the answer is a tailwind. What if you had not a headwind, but a tailwind pushing your little airplane at 370 miles an hour to your back, and you're being propelled towards Chicago? You could get all the way to LA and back again with that tailwind pushing you, and your airplane's pushing 100 miles an hour too. So the delta there between a headwind and a tailwind might be almost 800-900 miles an hour, right, of difference. So what am I saying? I'm saying if we can flip the script a little bit, not just worry so much about rate of return, but ask ourselves, who is doing the banking in our life? If the banker is coming at us with 37 cents on the dollar, then what if we could flip that script and become our own source of financing? What if we could be the banker that we are currently cursing in the middle of the night? if we could actually recapture some of the interest that we're paying to banks, credit cards, finance companies, mortgage companies, car loan companies, student loan companies, if we could become our own source of financing and bank on ourselves and fire our real estate banker, then imagine the kind of control, peace of mind, sanity. In my book, that's the biggest move we can make. It's not about rate of return. It's not about, hey, how great can my cap rate be on my real estate? To me, it's more about who's controlling the banking function in our life, and everything else becomes secondary at that point.
So what you're saying, essentially, if I'm hearing you correctly, is you become your own bank, and essentially you are loaning yourself money from some pool of money that you have, a retirement fund or something, I'm assuming. You're loaning yourself that money to buy a piece of property, and then you are paying yourself back, I'm guessing, with some interest, I'm assuming. And you're, instead of it going into the bank's coffers, it's going into your own coffers. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. What if you could basically do the same function? Banking happens.
Sure.
You know, we really, I mean, there's a great book out there. The title is the best part of the book, actually, Steve. The title of the book is Debt, the First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. And the title is the best part, in my opinion, but it speaks to the permanence of the banking function that human civilization has had since we were writing on cave walls. You know, so if we're going to have this thing called banking, the verb of banking in our life, I'm okay with the verb of banking. What I'm not okay with is the wrong noun. You know, the wrong banker is behind the desk for most people. You know, if we could put ourselves behind that banker's desk, we would control the environment where our money lives. And if you can control the environment where your airplane is flying, you know, every airplane flies through an environment, right? It's not like you're flying through a vacuum. So if you can control the wind of that environment where your airplane is flying, you'll win, hands down.
Let me ask you this and I'm just going to be devil's advocate here on this, because I totally get what you're saying, and I think I'm familiar with it. My only concern on something like that is, in some way, the banks, they almost act as like a watchdog for the person not to make a mistake, right? So you may think you've got a great deal. You take it to the bank and they say, hey, the loan to value ratio is way off on this. It's not going to appraise. And if I were have said when I first started, if I just had my own money, I would have bought it. And I did. In theory, I could have put myself in a bad situation. Now, I'm not saying you use them as the reason you do or do not, but it is another set of eyeballs. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I completely get you on this. And you bring up a great point. We are not the be-all, end-all for our decisions. However, I would like to say to the devil's advocate, let's let the market decide. You know, if I'm going to make a terrible mistake on this piece of business, on this piece of real estate, then I'll fail, I'll lose it all, and then a smart guy like Steve can pick it up for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, I guess in a way it's almost like Darwin's theory, right? It'll weed out the ones that don't know what they're doing. And I mean, and I agree, I totally agree. And I don't think that they should be the watchdog. Their fiduciary responsibility is to loan money, and that's it. And so, you know, and again, I'm just thinking out loud of, okay, what is the downside? And I'm thinking, to me, as someone who's seasoned and done this, not many, right? Because I've got the restraint to know what is not a good deal, to analyze it, to assess it, and then make a logical decision. Newer people, not so much, but the bank's not there to teach you a lesson. The bank's there to protect themselves, really, is what they're doing.
You know, and I can imagine that, you know, the newbies would need to call on a seasoned investor like Steve to ask, hey, teach me before I put my own money in. Let me partner with you on deals, Steve. Let me get your insight. Let me be apprenticed by you, rather than the banks being our nanny and slapping our hand before we make a mistake. I would much prefer to, you know, have a partnership with seasoned investors rather than a bank whose only interest is their shareholders. And you're right, to loan out cash. I'd say there's obviously risks on both sides of the horse here, but I'd rather fall off one side than the other.
Okay, so Mark, let's talk about this. Let's start reeling this into, I'm an investor, I own real estate. this sounds great in theory. I have a 9-to-5 career job, or had at some point, and I have a pool of money that is not giving me a return that I want to get, or that I think I could get. And we all think that we would be better stewards of our own money because, well, frankly, it's our own money, and we're probably going to watch it better than anyone else would, I would imagine.
Right.
Walk me through what this looks like to the average. Talk to me like I'm a third grader, and explain to me how I would go about this process. Because it sounds very intimidating and daunting if you're not familiar, as you are, because this is your world, to even start this process. And I'm sure it's probably a very methodical, systemized process, but it sounds very intimidating. So walk me through this if you don't mind.
Sure. Even driving our car is intimidating the first time we get behind the wheel, and then it becomes second nature. I think It becomes sort of a mindset shift that doesn't happen overnight, but it is very simple. If you think like a banker and you control the environment where your money lives, everything else becomes easier. What's that old question? Keller Williams or Keller says, what is the one thing you could do with your money? I'm adding for my emphasis. But what's the one thing you could do with your money such that by doing that one thing, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary?
Yeah, it's the one domino. It's like, what's the one domino I've got to do that will start knocking them all down towards the ultimate goal?
Exactly. It's the small hinge that swing the big doors. So the question I like to ask, and this is something hopefully everyone can start with, no matter how advanced you are in your real estate project, if you could just get rid of all the financial vehicles, financial products, real estate, multifamily, mutual funds, dynastic trusts, whatever, right? Get rid of all of that and just say, hey, if I could design the perfect financial vehicle for real estate investing and ultimately for financial peace, what kind of characteristics or attributes would I want it to have? That's a question I think everyone should ask. I don't have a specific answer for every person listening. I can't give particular individual advice on a show like this, but let's give some examples of what I'm talking about. So what's some characteristics of money? I mean, where you put your money makes it do different things.
Sure.
A hedge fund is different than a savings account because of the characteristics that you give your money when you put it into a hedge fund versus a savings account versus real estate versus annuities or whatever. So what are some things that I wanted my money to have when I was looking into real estate investing and paying off some debts that we carried from school? Well, for me, I needed a good competitive rate of return. I wanted to be able to get easy access to that money. I wanted liquid access for emergencies and for real estate opportunities. I wanted some guarantees that growth would be predictable and on schedule, so I would know exactly how much I would have in that vehicle every point along the way, every year. I wanted some tax advantages on the money. I didn't want to be told by the government or anybody else that I had to put in less or put in more in any given year. I wanted lots of flexibility for my real estate needs. And I wanted it to be privately held, meaning I didn't want creditors or lawsuits or heck, predators, just snooping around on my credit report, knowing that I owned XYZ, money in this XYZ account. So to me, that was sort of my short list. There's actually about 20 things I wanted, but that's a quick snapshot. Steve, would you add anything to that list? Just if you could just wave a magic wand.
Well, I think there's a, like you said, there's a lot of flavors here depending on what my goals are and what my, it's very interesting, I find, and I'm sure you see this probably more than I do, is that when it comes to money and when it comes to talking about your money, people get very, very awkward. They don't like to talk about it, and I think they feel that it is a definition of their knowledge, ego, education level if they are not either making a lot of money or they don't have a lot of money or they don't understand money. But what's so interesting is nobody ever teaches you about money. You're just supposed to know it or figure it out on your time off or in between your 9-to-5 job, and then figure out what to do with your money. But there's no classes, there's no people like you that are actually teaching in a university that says, hey, here's all the vehicles that are out here, and these are just vehicles. It is your money. to do with what you want. Because a lot of times when people put it in a 401k or something like that, once they do that, they almost feel like it's not their money and they don't get to see it. It's like in jail until they're in their 70s when they retire and pull it out. Yeah. And it's not theirs. They can look at it like it's like going to visiting day at prison. You can look in the window and you can stare at your money by looking at your statement, but you can't touch it, because if you touch it, you get penalized. And so that's what the common people, or at least myself, was raised to think of money that way. It's like, bye-bye, I'll see you in about 40 years. I hope and pray that you are bigger than when I left you, basically.
Yep.
But I really don't know what you're going to do in there for the next 20, 30 years. I'm just hoping that you come out bigger and stronger than when I first put you in, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Isn't that true?
That's a great metaphor. I've never thought about that before. Visiting day. I love that.
Yeah, visiting days, you get your
quarterly account statement.
Yeah, you get it's like this,
Yeah.
I'm looking at my money. Okay, good. Okay, well, high five each other. It looks like you're growing good. I'm gonna put you back and I'll see you in 30 days.
You got a bail fund for getting your money out, taxes and penalties. Yep. You got to pay bail. Yep.
Yeah.
So, I think that's exactly right. And most people just get the 401k, they're signing up for their new job and they don't think about it. It's okay that, we're all pretty busy, and there's a reason. If you think you're busy, why? Why are you so busy? In part, if we're working a third of our day for a bank, don't you think that adds more stress? That there's going to be more, broken relationships. There's going to be more insanity in terms of like keeping up with the Joneses. There's a reason why this matters. This matters on a human level as much as it does. Again, it matters where you keep your money. If all your money is tied up in your house, in your 401k, that's going to impact your relationships. It's going to impact your sanity. Now, so you're exactly right, Steve.
I'll put it another way that I thought was interesting. I had a friend of mine, he was an airline pilot, lived down in Oceanside, California. And he said, Steve, he said, I worked till August paying everything into government taxes, state taxes, city taxes, 401ks. He said, I don't see my paycheck basically until August.
Wow.
When you put it that way, and he says, it's just unbelievable, because he goes, on top of that, all the money that I'm putting into society and everything, they're not doing anything with my money. He says, so my earned income is basically going to waste, because the taxes that they're taking out of my earned income, and I don't know if there's anything on your side that you can do with on earned income or not, but he says, all the money that I'm being taxed on in my 401ks and this and that, he goes, I'm not seeing anything from it. He goes, all I know is August 1 is when I start getting all of my paycheck, basically.
Yep.
And I was like, when you think about that, we all have that date, right? That in our paychecks that we work for free essentially till. And when you actually put it in a tangible term like that, it was very, very interesting to think of it that way.
Well, you go back to serfdom in the United Kingdom, well, in England, the age of serfdom, where serfs had to give a whole 20% to their earls. All of 20%. Now, how many of us are in a higher than 20% tax bracket right now? And, and we all have to live in the land of the free, where we're putting double. Anyway, we're bemoaning a fact that everyone knows. Let's get to some solutions.
Let's get to it. Yeah, let's hear it, man. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, it's so intriguing to me, the human brain, and how we're so conditioned to, when they hear someone like you, they're like, you can't do that.
It's the boiled frog. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think it's important that people realize that you can do something different. That's just our conditioning. That's our mental conditioning.
Right.
And you can break the 4-minute mile. You can go to the moon. You can do these things. You just have to be told you can, and somebody to show you the path. So, like you said, let's kind of dig into the how now. How do we do this? And what are the benefits? And why would an investor do this thing?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so for me, it was sort of a long laundry list of characteristics that I needed my money to do for me, so that I would know that it was acting the way I wanted it to, and so that I would have the kind of life I wanted to have for real estate investing, yes, but more importantly, for my overall financial freedom in life. So I was looking for, again, liquidity, access to the cash, tax-free access to the money, no bail bond, no visiting day. I wanted to be able to use this for real estate investing and ultimately for my own financial future. And so I was going through my studies as a CFP, and they give you about 450, Steve, financial vehicles, products to really dive deep into and learn. One of which really caught my eye, and I didn't expect it. And it's a little known variation on old-fashioned whole life insurance, of all things. It does everything I just described for you. The more modern forms of whole life insurance that are dividend paying from a mutual life insurance company do a few things really well. So I'll kind of break it down quickly and then relate it to real estate. So whole life insurance has been around for over 200 years. It has a long proven track record, and they give you more cash on a guaranteed basis every single year. So on a guaranteed schedule, you see your net worth grow, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. On top of that guarantee, they'll throw dividends on top of that if the company is profitable. So it's a predictable schedule of growth inside the policy itself. So it's not term insurance where you're just renting the death benefit. You actually own the policy. It's more like owning a house. And when you own a house, you build up equity in your house. Same is true with whole life insurance. It grows and you build equity on a guaranteed schedule every single year for the rest of your life, which is pretty phenomenal right there. I mean, I could stop right there. But let me give you a couple more pieces that really caught my attention. Second, you can access the policy's cash value with no penalties, no age requirements. You don't have to be 59 and a half and 3/4 years old or whatever. It's your cash. It's your money. You can get it whenever you want. There's no visiting day. It's all your cash. So, and when you access the cash in the policy, it's completely income tax free. If you design the policy correctly, there's no taxes due and no penalties to get the money out.
So, okay, so you take this money, and I'm assuming this is the money that for real estate purposes, you would use to purchase a piece of real estate.
Correct.
And this would be, I'm assuming this would be normally all cash, an all cash deal. Is that right? You wouldn't use it as leverage, or is there a norm? Yeah. I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. Two ways to get the money out, Steve. It's a great question. So I just bought a piece of real estate last week, actually, and we did another passive private placement last fall. And what we did was we actually used our life insurance cash value as the source of capital for our investment. Okay. So the cash value builds up inside the policies, and these are different than grandma, grandpa's old dusty whole life policies. Okay. They're designed for as little expense and commission and death benefit as we can get away with, and as much cash value as possible. Usually the policy's cash is about 8 to even 40 times as much cash as the old-fashioned stuff that Dave Ramsey likes to hate on and Susie Orman loves to hate on. So the cash in the policy is built up very quickly. You get it in the first month even, but we had enough to invest in some real estate. Now what we've done, we did two different strategies here. One, we just took a policy loan from our life insurance, which you can do. It's your right. You have first access to the cash value. You can borrow against your cash value and then invest in real estate. Now, what's neat about this, Steve, is when I borrow against my life insurance, I'm not actually liquidating the money out of the account. I'm actually borrowing against it, kind of like a HELOC on my life insurance almost, but without all the risks of a HELOC. So when I borrow against my life insurance, the policy will continue to grow and compound even on the capital I borrowed. So to say that another way, if I've got a 200 grand in a life insurance cash value and I borrow out $50,000 for a fix and flip, let's say, or a passive income deal, that year I'll get my real estate going over here, but over in my policy, it's still going to pay me guaranteed interest and dividends on the entire $200,000 as if I had not touched a dime of the money.
And then when do you have to start paying that money back?
Yeah, there is, since you're the banker, quote unquote, you get to decide that. You're in complete control over the repayment schedule. Again, unlike a HELOC where the other guy, the other banker, is determining how your repayment's going to go, there is no required repayment plan. Now, the life insurance company is no dummy. They do charge a loan interest, and it's in your best interest to pay that loan off over a reasonable period of time.
Sure.
However, if you never pay it off and you pass away years from now with the loan outstanding, it'll just be deducted from your death benefit when you pass away. So the insurance company knows they're going to be paid back either on this side of the grave or the other, so they're comfortable waiting. They actually, instead of paying the family, let's say I had $1 million death benefit, instead of getting $1 million, they'd get 950,000 in my previous example there. They'd get 1 million minus 50 is 950,000. Plus, Steve, they'd get the real estate deal. My family would get the real estate deal. So it kind of works itself out when you pass away if you never paid that loan off. Why would I pay off a loan to myself? Well, heck, I want to do more real estate deals. As soon as I get the money in my policy, I'm able to borrow it out again.
Okay, so I got a couple. I'm making notes. I got a couple questions here. So, first of all, you buy the real estate. How is it titled? Is my first question.
Yeah, it's in your name. You're considered a cash buyer to the selling agent and the sellers and everything. It's a cash purchase. If you're doing a 100% deal, it's considered a cash purchase to everybody in the transaction. The only person or entity that knows you borrowed from your life insurance is the life insurance company. Again, it's a private transaction. It's a private contract with a private insurance company. Nobody else, not your credit report. Nobody really needs to know that where the money came from.
But what kind of claim does he like? Let's say I get hit by a chicken bus crossing the street in Chicago. And all of a sudden,
there are tons of those, by the way.
There are tons of those delivering deep dish pizza.
Yeah.
So what happens? Like where is this logged that they have the rights? And I'm curious about this.
Yeah.
Where is that logged and tracked if it's not on the deed and it's not recorded anywhere?
It's internal to the life insurance contract that you own and have a relationship with the insurance company. Again, imagine the numbers: $200,000 of cash value and $1 million death benefit, just for simple math here. Mm-hmm. All right, so we can use that 200 grand for our real estate, or sending our kid to college, or buying our cars. I buy at least my cars to my business the same way, by the way. We paid off our student loans the same way. We renovate our house, our own kitchen could be done through the policy. It's all liquid cash. So 200 grand of cash, $1 million death benefit. If I borrow 50,000 to go buy a real estate deal or whatever, again, my 200 grand is going to grow even on the capital I borrowed. And if I pass away, the life insurance is self-collateralized.
Got it.
So that means the death benefit will be reduced when I pass away. Right. Nobody else needs to know that that's where your money came from. It's private.
Is there a percentage limit that you're allowed to borrow against it?
That's a good question. You can always borrow about 90% of your cash value.
Okay. Now, my next question is let's say that I buy this as a rental property, and you, Mark, are now a renter of mine, and you are bringing home a deep dish pizza, and there's so much cheese that it falls on your shoe, you slip, you fall, you break your head on a tile, and now you're suing me.
Yeah.
Who gets sued?
I guess you have the LLC, I hope, to protect you personally.
Yeah. So, okay. And I'm just curious, is the insurance policy, is the rest of the asset of the insurance policy at risk of this suit? Could they go after everything is my question. Yeah,
good question. Well, look at your state for an exempt asset list for what's exempt from lawsuits. But in almost every state, the considerable portion or all of your cash value is protected from lawsuits and creditors who, if you go through a bankruptcy or that deep dish fatality, you would be protected from that lawsuit accessing or even viewing your life insurance. They don't want to defraud or disinherit your spouse or children. So the courts have always maintained a fairly strict firewall between the creditor and life insurance cash values.
Yeah, I was just curious because I didn't know if that, I guess, because it's not titled and it doesn't own the asset per se,
right? They
couldn't get to it. But that was my question: is if it was titled, then I would think they may have rights to say, well, this is a big bank account, we can go drain that in some sort of suit.
This is why I don't keep any real cash in actual. I do have a regular checking account. I do have cash in there for certain amounts. But we're keeping our real cash in things other than other people's money and other people's banks.
Yeah.
I want. So there are some downsides to this, Steve, and I'd be happy to. Give a balanced approach here.
Yeah. Before you do that, though, one final question I have is, are you allowed to dictate the rate, insurance rate? So you're getting you're getting a certain hit from the insurance company that they're charging me. Can I wrap that and say, well, they're 1%, I'm going to charge 7%, and who gets that money?
Yeah, good question. So the insurance company does charge a loan interest rate. It's, they're not doing the loan for charity.
Right.
They're looking at it as a part of their overall portfolio of profit. Now, here's what's interesting. Again, if it's a mutually owned company, Steve, you are that life insurance company. You own the company that's charging you interest.
Okay.
So when you get dividends at the end of the year, it's a part of the
overall fund.
Exactly. Yeah. So you bring up a great point, and it proves you're thinking like a banker. I love charging myself extra interest. Why? Sure. I want to compete with the banks down the street.
Right.
If I'm not charging at least what the bank down the street would have, then I'm ripping myself off. I don't want to steal from my own bank. So yes, you can overfund your life insurance, charge yourself extra interest. It's really nothing different than just pumping more money into your policy as paid up additions, as the fancy word there. But you're able to charge yourself up to a limit. You can charge yourself any interest rate you want as extra premium or paid up additions into your policy. It actually makes you wealthier when you do that.
Yeah. Now, this may not be the right word or the right correct term, but can you siphon off that interest rate that doesn't go back into the pot of the insurance money, but goes into my my LLC account?
Give me a bit more context to your question.
Well, let's say the bank, the fund is charging 2% and I'm charging 7% for the loan. And so there's a 5% delta, there's a 5% spread. And so because of that, I'm making 5% on my money. That money doesn't go back into the fund to replenish the insurance money. Does it go into my own bank account?
No, let's think of it like a bank. So it's not a bank. A life insurance policy is a policy, but let's talk about it like a bank. And a physical bank has two doors. It has the back door and it has the front door. The back door is where the owners are bringing in capital. They're throwing money into the vault of your bank. And the more capital in the vault, the more they can loan it out to everybody else. So the more profitable they become, the bigger the vault is. The front door is where customers are bringing in repayments on their loans. Now, you are your own source of financing. So, without getting too schizophrenic here, you kind of have access to both doors. As you repay your policy loan, let's say the renter, for example, Steve, your renter at your real estate deal that you bought and invested using the policy. We had a lady who, started a life insurance policy, dumped in 150 grand, and then 30 days later, she borrowed out about $120,000 to invest in a new condo here in Chicago area. The renter in that condo started paying her a rent check, and that rent check went right back into repaying her policy loan for her. So now her policy loan is being paid off. Well, she had some extra cash. So she dumped more money into the policy as premium. That's the back door of the bank. The vault is being capitalized. We're adding more and more wealth to that policy. I wouldn't keep it at the LLC's bank account, the checking account down the street. I'd put it right back into my policy personally, because that's just more wealth for me to have access to on my next real estate deal.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a couple minutes left. Can you said you had a balanced conversation. Can you give me the other balance in a couple minutes?
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it brief, but obviously don't just do this because you heard it on a podcast,
Yes.
Sit down and listen to somebody, really look at your own needs. Again, go back to that question. What do you want your money to do for you? And so again, this is life insurance. So there are still expenses to setting up the policy. And if it's not designed correctly, not all advisors know about this. Unfortunately, many investment advisors will tell you, the Dave Ramsey line, you could do better rate of return. And you could on a good year. These life insurance policies are going to be very boring. Middle single digit returns is about what you can expect. I don't consider life insurance an investment. It's not. It's a life insurance policy. It does provide a sweet space for you to pack in your cash, but it's not going to do double-digit returns in the policy itself. It's really meant to be sort of like nitro and glycerin. The life insurance and the real estate go really well together. Sure. In fact, they make each other better than they would be on their own. You get a higher yield on your real estate deal when you borrow from your life insurance rather than just spending cash It's the tailwind concept of the airplane. You're getting the arbitrage in the life insurance, and you're getting the real estate deal as well. But again, don't just work with any advisor. That's one of the downsides.
And I think that, you hit on a point about the Dave Ramseys and the Sue Zormans and stuff. And I think I look at it as you can walk, you can run, you can rollerblade, you can roller skate, you can ride a bicycle, you can ride a motorcycle or a car. All of these will get you to a destination. Some may take you longer. Yep. Some may be more dangerous. Some may make you crash if you don't know how to ride a motorcycle. But essentially, they will all get you there. Everybody just has the runners hate the bike riders. The bike riders hate the motorcycle riders. It's one of those things. And again, I'm not in this race. So I think it's interesting to see that everybody has a different way. And I think the answer is they all work, but you got to learn how to run correctly. You got to learn how to ride a motorcycle. And again, I think like what you said at the end is, there are some perils, there are some negatives, and you just got to make sure that you understand the world and the sandbox that you're playing in, because you want to make sure that you know what you're doing. You want to be educated. Just like in real estate, I tell people all the time, you can trust but verify. Do not put all of your faith in someone else and say, just do it, I don't want to know anything. Yeah. That is a recipe for a disaster. And that's why a lot of people end up losing everything they own, not because they were taken advantage of, but because they didn't know what they wanted and they just left it up to someone who has no idea what they wanted, and maybe they weren't the most qualified to do it. And I think it's this concept that you talked about. I think it's a great concept, and like you said, it takes a little bit more conversation. It takes a little bit more of understanding and knowing the right infrastructure to set up before you go and do it.
You bet.
So Mark, I really appreciate this. Is very, very interesting. I'm very glad we got to talk. If somebody wants to get a hold of you directly and they want to talk to you, how do they find you?
Yeah, and so I agree with you, man. The most dangerous words in the financial universe are "do it for me." Those are the 4 most dangerous words. So can't agree with you more there. If folks want to date me first, check us out at Not Your Average Financial Podcast. Find it wherever this show is heard, Not Your Average Financial Podcast. If you want to check us out and chat with us, either me or one of my advisors, the website to go to is Grow More Wealth, growmorewealth.com. If you go to growmorewealth.com, we'll be able to pick a time on our calendars and we can chat and say hi and see if this is a good fit for you.
That's awesome. Well, Mark, thanks so much. And for those of you that are watching, I want to thank Mynd Property Management. They make all of this happen. If you want to know more about managing your properties with Mynd, we're in 16 regions, managing over 8,000 properties, and pretty much in a region that's investable that you want to be in, we're probably there. So definitely worth taking a look at us, having a strategic conversation. And the website is mynd.co. So it's MYND.co. And there you can find all the videos, all the context. Please like, subscribe, share this video. Make sure you let people know about it. We bring a new one out every week with top level people down to the basic investor. And I think it's important that we talk about not only the wins, but the challenges we all go through, because I think that is the thing that a lot of people think is the illusion that we don't have problems and we don't have mistakes. And I think that's pretty much an illusion, because that's not true. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody has a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake, but having the right people around you is, I think, what makes the difference. So everybody, thank you for watching today. On behalf of Mark, myself, and Mynd Property Management, thank you very much, and we will catch you next time.